origins of french fries and a soldier bear, ancient siege that literally changed the world, and the truth about pirate flags. This and much more awaits you in this video filled with historic facts that are weirder than fiction. I bet that you don't know at least one of them. Let's start with two things that always go together: France and potatoes. Shockingly, the French hated potatoes and used them exclusively to feed animals. It all changed thanks to a pharmacist called Parmentier. How did he do it? By the best method available, of course, tricking people into liking it. He bought 2 acres of land, planted potatoes, and most importantly, hired guards for protection. Or so it seemed. He secretly told his guards to accept bribes and to not catch anyone. And of course, his plan worked. People thought that something worth guarding was, well, really worth it, and began to steal it. As you already know, his plan worked. This man also first learned how to extract sugar from sugar beets, a real MVP. And then the French invented French fries. Or did they? The origins of French fries are debated to this day. Belgium claims they invented it, and a 1781 family manuscript proves it, but French claim that street vendors invented it just a few years before the French Revolution. The simple truth is that they're delicious. You know what also was invented in France? Parkour! And of course it has a connection to Karl Marx. His great-great-great-grandson, Joseph Marx, is doing parkour on YouTube. Pretty neat, huh? While we're on the topic of France, did you know that Napoleon never started a war? Yes, the general and emperor who won the most battles in history was always on the defense. But he was on the defense very offensively. Well, let's finally leave France and talk about pirates. Everyone knows about the infamous Jolly Roger, a black flag with skull and bones used by pirates. They even personalized it. You could identify the pirates simply by looking at their flag. But there's a thing that most people don't know. Just think, wouldn't it be insane to sail with the Jolly Roger the whole time? Well, that's the thing. They didn't. In reality, pirates didn't fly any flag or hide under the flag of the country they've been in. And then, once they decided to attack a ship, they would change it to a red flag to give their prey a chance to surrender. Then, and only then, they would change to a black flag, and that's how every pirate operated. Except one. Bartholomew Roberts, or Black Bart, was incredibly famous, and as you can imagine, being a famous pirate isn't exactly a good thing. One day in 1720, he sailed into the harbor of Trepassy, black flag flying. Everyone panicked, including 22 merchants who abandoned their ships. The thing is, 22 merchants could easily win, but, well, nobody messed with Black Bart. That's some strong psychological pressure. What was behind Black Bart's successful career as a pirate? It's none other than good old discipline. He was always well dressed and had many rules on his ship. No gambling, no women, and fair division of loot. No women rule didn't age well, especially considering how many famous women pirates there were. Ching Shi, Mary Read, Anne Bonny, and many more. Tell us in the comments if you want to see an episode devoted to these infamous women. There are a lot of regulations nowadays in sports. Is it a good thing? I'm sure you'll say yes after this story. The 1904 Olympic Marathon in St. Louis sounds like a story from a cartoon, but it's all real. Let's start with the winner of the race. The guy got tired 1/3 into the marathon and drove the rest of the race in a car. When he realized that he was close to the finish line, he exited the car and ran the rest, ultimately winning the race. This is not the end, not even close. He was found out, and the gold medal was instead given to the second winner, who was carried to the finish line by his coaches. Why? Well, they followed a weird pseudoscience theory and instead of water, gave their trainee a mixture of brandy, egg whites, and rat poison. Yes, rat poison. In a weird way, it worked as the unconscious racer was the winner, even if he was carried by his trainer. The third finisher, or more precisely second, was just a regular guy. Nothing special about him. I wonder how he felt about the whole situation. But it gets crazier. The fourth finisher was a simple mailman from Cuba who managed to participate in the race by running through the entire country and collecting donations. And with that, he managed to participate in the race. Nope, that's not what happened. He lost all his money gambling in New Orleans and managed to get barely enough money to get to St. Louis. Of course, he had no money to buy any gear for running, so he cut his dress pants into shorts. This man would have come first if he didn't take a nap on the side of the road after eating some rotten apples. Number 9 and number 12 finishers were from South Africa, and they weren't even their country's delegates. Instead, they were just simple students who decided to run for fun. They ran barefoot, and number 9 was chased off the main course by some dogs. Russians were supposed to come too, but they didn't. Why? Because they were still using their older Julian calendar while everyone else used the Gregorian. And maybe that was for the best. Not everyone survived the race. There was just one stop where they could drink water, and many of them had to breathe in the dust raised by passing cars. Remember, it was a dirt road, and all of this under the blazing sun. This wasn't the only crazy race happening in the 20th century. In 1908, a car race around the world began, and things that happened were as, if not more, insane than this one. Interested? Leave a like and comment and we'll surely tell you more in our next videos. Have you heard about the capture of Guam? If not, you absolutely have to. During the Spanish-American War, American ships fired their cannons on a Spanish island. They didn't do any damage. Then, they noticed a boat rowing towards them. It was the ship's governor, who apologized profusely for not returning the salute, as they didn't have any cannons or gunpowder. I can only imagine how annoyed the captain was as he had to explain that this wasn't a salute and they were really attacking the island. The governor surrendered because, well, they didn't have any cannons or gunpowder, as you remember. Americans had more important things to do, so they left the island when they found out that an American lived on it. He promised them that he'll look after the island. Did you know that originally Greek and Roman statues were painted? It was all cleaned off in the modern times. Some thought it was dirt, others just didn't like it. It's weird imagining Rome as a city with colorful statues all around, and maybe it looks much better without paint on it. The history of Rome is fascinating. They turned a city of criminals into a giant empire thanks to the system of laws and progressive tactics, such as replacing phalanx used by the whole Mediterranean to flexible maniples. But there's one thing that Romans almost lost to: bears. Bears in tunnels. When mighty Romans laid siege on Themyscira, they began to dig tunnels into the city. And you know what happens next. Themyscira is a famous mythical city, but it existed in reality. And of all of the stories, Tunnel Bear one is real. Reality's often weirder than fiction. I mentioned earlier warfare tactics that Romans invented and perfected. I could talk about it for hours, but few people know about secret Roman tactics. They would put sandals on sleeping people's hands and then tickle their face so they'd slap themselves. Truly devious. Next insane story of the Siege of Tyre that demonstrates why Alexander the Great was so great. Tyre was an island with an impregnable fortress on it. It was almost impossible to conquer it. You would need a bunch of ships as the bare minimum. Alexander and Macedonians began to collect rubble, dirt, and pieces of mountains, and then they began to build a path to the island. People of Tyre tried to stall Macedonians, but all was futile. After 6 months, on Alexander's 24th birthday, they finally conquered Tyre. And it was no longer an island, but a peninsula, and remains one to this day. Before we leave the Mediterranean, it's important to talk about Sparta. Media depicts it as a city of perfect soldiers, but the truth is much murkier than that. Harsh living conditions were supposed to create super effective soldiers, and most accounts tell us that they failed. What they didn't fail in is marketing. In fact, it was so effective it works even today, and it worked back then. Sometimes in the opposite ways you would expect. Sparta never had a wall because, allegedly, their soldiers were so great they didn't need it. Again, great marketing. During the Persian War, Persians hired a Greek guide to show them Sparta. And when they saw it, they were confused and disappointed. This couldn't be Sparta, it looks like a village. So they thought the guide was lying and left Sparta alone. In a weird backwards way, Sparta saved themselves by not building a wall. I imagine Persians disappointedly said, "This is Sparta?" when they saw it. The longest presidential inauguration speech was made by William Henry Harrison on March 4th, 1841. The weather was terrible, but the new president delivered a 2-hour speech. Ironically, he caught pneumonia and died a month later. Oops. It's understandable that there were so many facts about the Mediterranean, but it's quite unexpected to have 2 about bears. Wojtek was a Syrian brown bear bought by Polish soldiers in Iran when he was a cub. Feeding and transporting a bear was quite expensive, so they put him to work. He helped move crates in 1944 and became a celebrity with allies. He even got promoted to corporal. He lived the rest of his life in a Scottish zoo, and every time one of his former comrades would visit him, he would recognize them and respond well to the Polish language. Emperor Qin Shi Huang is a very important historical figure. He unified China and gave it its name. An achievement like that makes one a lot of enemies, and one day they sent an assassin after him. Smart Emperor survived the attack in the dumbest way possible. His assassin tried to negotiate with Qin Shi Huang, but failed as the Emperor ran away. Jin Kai, the assassin, pursued him, but couldn't reach because the Emperor ran around the pillar for 5 minutes before guards arrived. So now you know what to do in situations like that. Enjoy the video, like and subscribe, and tell us what you would want to see in the next video.